took me almost dying to stop and go, hey, this isn't worth it. Being big is not worth dying.
You're taking drugs, you're trying to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and you're getting sicker and sicker and sicker. That's bigorexia.
I'm not a morning person.
Dedicated to being passionate about it.
Bodybuilders have become more lazy.
People have always thought I lift fake weights.
Iran and the United States.
You take responsibility for that. Wesley, what's up, man?
Hey, what's up? Nice to finally meet you. Seen you a lot online, but never really talked to you.
Good to meet you, man. I was looking forward to it, man.
Yeah, me too, man.
I'm a big fan of yours, man.
Thank you, appreciate it. I watched all the Generation Iron documentaries, movies, so really love the stuff you do. So hopefully one day we'll be part of one of them.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I think we should make that happen for sure. And you in Netherlands right now, right?
Yeah, that's true. I live in the Netherlands.
Now, you're born and raised there. For some reason, I assumed that you moved to the States like years ago. I didn't know you were still living there.
Yeah, well, it actually is my plan. It's not official yet, but I do plan on one day moving to the States because ever since 2018, when I did my first show in the USA, I was like, okay, this is way better than the Netherlands. At least that's just my personal preference. Like everything is bigger. It just feels, the culture is better, revolving bodybuilding, and I just feel at home there. So, every time I go there to a different state, I'm just surprised by how nice it is there. So definitely in the future, I am considering moving there. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. So how did you, I saw an interview with you recently. You mentioned that Netherlands is not very bodybuilding friendly. How did you get into bodybuilding and why? When you were a teenager, I'm assuming?
Yeah, that's true. When I was a teenager, when I was 14 years old, I first joined the gym. And, my goal really was just to get stronger and bigger, but never to be an actual bodybuilder because, I wasn't, as you said, in the Netherlands, I wasn't really, in touch with any bodybuilders at all because it wasn't really a thing here. If you get in touch with the hardcore bodybuilding gyms here, then yes, you will get in touch with the competitors. But in most gyms, you don't see bodybuilders here. You just see regular people working out. So I never knew what it took to actually be a true competitive bodybuilder. I watched the Olympia on YouTube. I saw Roddy Coleman. I saw Jake Cutler. I was like, okay, I'm never going to be that big, so I'm not even going to try. But after like 7 or 8 years, somebody in a different, more hardcore gym actually came up to me and said, why don't you try your first bodybuilding show? Because you look great. You're already very defined. And I was 20 years at the time. And for my age, I was quite muscular. So I was just like, well, I know I can win this show because I'm not big enough. And then he showed me like a poster of like a regional show, how the guys actually look like at an amateur show. And I was like, oh, maybe I actually have a shot at doing quite good at this. So then I joined that show. And he offered to be my coach for free for that show. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to do it. And then I actually won the overall as a junior. And of course, when you win your first show, that's going to put a fire on you to actually keep going. So that's what I did. And eventually actually became, a Classic Physique pro, what I am today. So very happy I take the decision.
Well, yeah, for sure. How did you become a pro? Did you become a pro in Europe or out here?
Yeah, actually the first Classic Physique show ever in Europe was in London in 2018. That's when the NPC actually moved to Europe as well. And the first show was in London called the Royal London Pro. And right at that time, I actually won the super heavyweight class overall in the Netherlands. And I was like, okay, now I have achieved everything I can as an amateur bodybuilder. But there wasn't anything else for me to transition to yet. And that's when Classic Physique came to Europe. And I was like, okay, this is perfect for me to do. And London is very close by as well. It's like not even a 2-hour flight. So no jet lag, nothing. So I had nothing to lose. And the only thing I had to do is drop some weight to make my weight class as an amateur still. But that was no problem because the only benefit that gave me was get super conditioned to actually drop the weight. I was very conditioned at that show and then won my pro card there and went on to do some pro shows after that.
And you chose to be in the Classic Physique specifically when you got your pro card?
Yeah, that's true. So I won my pro card in the Classic Physique class, and I really wanted to do that class because Classic Bodybuilding has always been, my motivation to be a better bodybuilder, not necessarily a bigger bodybuilder, because I always looked up to the golden era of bodybuilding, like Arnold Schwarzenegger and guys like that, and he still to this day is my idol in terms of how physique could actually look. And still to this day, I think that physique is one of the best looking physiques ever. And also how gracefully he could still showcase that amount of muscle on stage is just amazing to me. And how professional they were back in the day. And that to me, that was true bodybuilding. So I knew I was never going to be a super heavyweight bodybuilder or on the pro stage with the open guys because I'm 6'2" or 6'3", right in between there. So I have to be very heavy to be competitive with those guys. And I don't think that will be possible in the short term anyway. So Classic Physique was right around the corner and I hit the weight limits right away. So that was a perfect transition for me.
Now, being so tall, right, for bodybuilding, 6'2", 6'3", is that a gift or a curse, you think?
It was a curse at the beginning because when I look at my stage pictures, at first I was like very skinny, like my legs especially, they were straight up and down pretty much. But since then I gained at least about 30 kilos or 70 pounds of muscle. So, when you put that much muscle on a tall frame, eventually it's going to fill out. And then when you then stand on stage, all eyes are drawn to you because you're the biggest guy on stage. Especially when you fill out the frame, then everything is in proportion, just like a classic bodybuilder should be. And I think in classic physique, it has an advantage because if you are proportioned and you're tall and you're going against a guy who is short but has the same proportions, I think the judges would first go for the tall guy because he is more dominant on stage. He has more muscle in absolute terms. So I think that's a benefit in classic physique.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I would say I would agree with you. And I feel like that's part of the reason why Chris Bumstead is becoming so successful as well.
Yeah,
because he's so
I think so
tall.
too. Yeah,
You know
I
what I mean?
agree. Yeah.
Now, it's funny because obviously Netherlands is a European country, right? And like you mentioned, in Europe, maybe it's bodybuilding is not as celebrated. But if you look at the history, right? You look at Arnold Schwarzenegger from Europe, Dorian Yates from Europe.
Yeah,
Some
yeah.
of the most popular bodybuilders come from Europe.
Yeah, that's true. In Europe, in general, in Europe, it is quite popular, especially in the UK, in Germany, in countries like that. It's very popular. But if I look at the Netherlands on its own, like of course we have William Bonac, who is one of the best bodybuilders in the world, of course, and we also have Barry de May, who was also third at the Mr. Olympia at one point. So those are very big names coming from the Netherlands, and I'm trying to be one of them right now. But apart from that, if you really look at the overall bodybuilding scene in the Netherlands, if you compare it to the USA, it's a lot smaller. It's not just a smaller country, but also it's the culture here doesn't accept it the same way as the people do in the USA. At least that's from my experience. If I walk around in the USA, they would actually celebrate the fact that you look good. But in the Netherlands, they might actually, be a bit more negative about how you look because they don't want you to show off your physique that way. And in my experience in the United States, they actually, they promote actually, when you show off your hard work, they actually tell you that I should be proud of it and that I did a good job and how did I achieve this instead of being negative about it. So that's the biggest difference that I noticed.
Now, it seemed like, in your bodybuilding career, only been for a few years now. You're still very, very young. You're in your 20s, right?
Yeah, true.
But it seemed like you've built a very loyal following, and I know that because I remember like before every major competition, Generation I would publish like predictions,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
like a bunch of your fans would like send emails and messages, and they were angry like, what you got to put Wesley in the top of your predictions. What's going on with Wesley, man? I'm like, who's Wesley, man? And that is how I learned about you actually through your fans. So you have some hardcore fans out there, right?
Yeah, that's truly amazing. I think it's because a lot of people still are on they're still deciding what classic physique should really be. Now with Chris Bumps as the winner, I think it's a bit more clear. But before they were like, okay, is classic physique truly like the golden era? or is it simply more an aesthetic physique with good conditioning, with superb conditioning? Actually, I think they're moving more towards that, but there's still a lot of people who just want to see that golden era physique on stage today, but then with, of course, the proportions of today with a bit bigger legs, of course. And I think that I can represent that golden era physique, and I'm trying to mold it into the modern standards as well with the conditioning. So I think that I am, a unique case in that way, that I, still stand for that true, 70s bodybuilding. At least I'm trying to. While at the same time, a lot of other guys who are now in classic and ranking higher than me don't really represent that type of bodybuilding, but more the aesthetic side, because there are a lot of guys in the top 10 in classic physique who are super aesthetic. They just have a shape that I don't have. But at the same time, I have the height, I have the, the dominance basically when standing on stage, the amount of muscle compared to the grace of one's physique through posing. I think that there's a big difference in what you prefer. And I think there are some hardcore fans who do prefer that kind of physique and representation on stage compared to the aesthetic guys that are in the top 10 right now.